Greetings, esteemed scholars. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Wherever you are, some of you are joining us right on Zoom. I can see a number of people there when I look on the other screen. So welcome, esteemed colleagues. I see you are coming from different places. We've got scholars from Swaziland. We've got scholars from Zimbabwe. We've got scholars from different parts of the world. And we've got scholars from South Africa and mainly Johannesburg. I greet you all, colleagues. I'm excited today. It's my birthday. That's one thing. So I'm glad for the gift of life. And I'm standing here and I'm still saying, yay. And I made it. It's not been an easy year, but here I am. And I am here because of you. You know, the statement that says we are, or I am because you are. So I am because you are. And you are because you are passionate about research. And I'm passionate about research. And together we are continually and committed through difficulties, thick and thin, to make sure that we actually expand and build on research and the passion for research and research methodology. Is absolutely very, very, very critical. As a matter of fact, I've been asked by quite a number of scholars from different universities who are saying to me, Prof, you don't seem to be doing much about different aspects of the concepts of research methods. And I said, we covered those. If you look at our program on our website, you'll see that we covered the concepts in the beginning. But there was that demand and that request that even before we get into deeper concepts such as dimensions and designs, let us just go back and just take it and take it once more and deal with the components of a full research output or a research proposal. And this is what we're going to deal with. So please, if you are coming and joining for the first time and you are seeing us on YouTube or you are seeing us on Facebook particularly, and then our guests in here on Zoom, please just take it and see that this publication or this video, it's actually clickable and downloadable, particularly on YouTube. You can download it and keep it as your archive. So if you visit YouTube, please start to like us. Let us grow the subscriber community. So today, first of all, my name is King Costa. I'm a professor and Pro-Vice Chancellor of South Valley University in South Africa. South Valley University in South Africa is a tuition center for South Valley University that is based in Zambia. And then I'm also a chancellor of Amadi University that is based in Swaziland that deals with, let me start, South Valley focuses on, from our perspective, we focus on postgraduate research from master's to doctorate. And then in Swaziland, we focus on anything from certificate right up to master's level, specifically in education and commerce. So that's my background. But my passion for research started when I noted that there was actually a void or a need for scholars to understand the logical connect of research right from the start of the research itself up to the end. And starting with myself, when I was studying, I used never to understand even a simple word such as a triangulation. So if you look at my slide now, if I'm taking you through to the slide, if you look at the slide right now, this slide is based on the model I created. So don't be surprised that I am King Costa and I'm presenting Costa. This hasn't got much relation conceptually, but the relation is that I am the one who came up with the concept. So I know I lost today, but let's look at Costa, what it stands for. So C deals with concepts. So C part of Costa deals with concepts. There are many concepts. Scholars, if we don't understand scholars, we are not enriched in our research journey. We are not enriched in our research dialogues, wherever we are dialoguing or even writing for publications, for articles, for anything that we are dealing with that has got to do with research. If we are not grounded on concepts, we are always having something lacking. Because when we understand concepts, then we are able to come up with clear objectives or even intentionality state of what you want to do, what you want your research to be about. You are able to do that once you understand the concepts themselves. So this is grounding. And once you know what you want to do, because scholars come to me and say, I've got a proposal, I've got a topic already, and I would like us to discuss the topic. And I'm saying, but do you know exactly what is the area of interest? So you need first to have gone to look at your area of interest. So let's look at, again, the slide and look at S. If you look at S there, S now talks about the situation. What is the current and the old situation? So what do I mean by current and old situation? Let's talk about South Africa currently. We're talking about the government of, the GNU, Government of National Unity, for instance. Government of National Unity, GNU, is a concept. So if you wanted to write about it, in terms of the S, you would need to explain how is GNU in South Africa at this current moment. How much is known about GNU? What are the people's perceptions about GNU? Where has GNU worked before? What were its successes and pitfalls? You know, you look at all those kind of things and they help you to understand the S part of the costa, which is situation. Anything you write about could be an educational concept or a new curriculum that you're coming up with. You need to understand right now what is said. Now, when you get to situation, you get sources, you get your information, and your information should come from credible and verifiable sources. So your information is not coming from sources that cannot be verifiable, because that weakens your argument. So your argument should be based on strong evidence, and strong evidence is that which has gone through the acid test, that which has been peer reviewed and understood and agreed by scholars that it actually means what it actually means. So that is strong evidence. And strong evidence, we get it from publications, we get it from conference proceedings or books. And these are scientific outputs that I'm talking about, not just any other books, because there's lots of books there. And other books are books that I just want to write, and I write about myself. It has not gone through peer review. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about scientific and scholarly outputs. So there are books that focus broadly on these issues of these concepts that I'm talking about, and I'm going to get deeper into, like a book on research methods, like a book on qualitative research, like a book on quantitative research. See, such kind of books are scholarly books. That's what you can use. The danger of using the S part in these books is that the information could be outdated, and I'll tell you what I mean when I talk about outdated information in terms of the scientific position of what you are looking at, of these concepts. So the other key concept is the next one, which is methodology, TACT. Before I move the slide, I must just address this one. TACT, it's an important concept, as you can see. And then the other one is the assessment of impact. So TACT deals with the methods. And this is when many students say they are struggling. They find it easy to write chapter 1 and chapter 2. And when it gets to chapter 3, they say they are struggling. And chapter 3 traditionally is the one chapter that deals with TACT, which is method, the game, how you play the game, how you're going to go ahead and play this game. So that's the TACT. And assessment of impact means that your research at the end of the day, it should actually, we should be able to assess it and say, did it make the impact that it meant to make? So when you write a research, it's for a particular impact. Now let's look at this slide, for instance, that I put up there. So concepts only. So you can see it talks about in-depth introduction to research language and applicable concepts. So research is a language. Every language is made up of concepts. If I want to speak any particular, if I want to learn German, I need to understand the concepts, fundamental concepts in German language. If I want to learn Xhosa, if I want to learn Pedi, Tswana, I need to understand the concepts. And the understanding of concepts does not only end in understanding, but it gives comprehension. So I get to understand how concepts relate to one another. So it's absolutely very important to know that concepts do relate. So you don't just know concepts, but you don't know how they relate to one another. It's absolutely very, very important that I understand that the concepts relate to this one and how, in what nature, in what situation. This is critical in research so that you know when to use what concept. But even in any language, we know that. So the next part is that for us to understand these concepts, key concepts, as you can see now, they are ontology, epistemology, axiology, and methodology. So I'm going to focus a lot today on the main three, which is ontology, epistemology, and methodology. I'll talk a little bit about axiology, but these ones are very explicit. So if you talk about ontology, for instance, you are referring to reality of the study, and you'll see different ontologies. I'll get into them now. So if you talk about ontology, you are referring to, you are referring to reality itself. What is the reality of the study? What is the reality of the researcher themselves? So the participants have got their own reality. The question you are looking at has got a particular reality. GNU, I made an example. So GNU, Government of National Unity, is a reality. It is an ontology. It's a belief system. It's a philosophy. It's a philosophy where all parties come together and rule a country together. So it's a particular reality. Now that reality has got the reality which is the lens through which the government is going to be run. But there is a lens of the citizens themselves as well. So these are varied perspectives. These are multiple perspectives. So let me put this in order for you. When I talk about the reality of the citizens, I am talking about a subjective reality. It is multi-perspectival. It's got multiple perspectives. It's got perspectives of each and every citizen, or even citizens within different parties. So there are parties. ANC has got its own perspective of GNU and experience, and I'm now talking about citizens themselves. And then IFP the same, DA the same. All parties that are in there, they are seeing this with their own lens. So what's important is to make sure that all their lenses are brought at least together. They may not be the same, but they may be close together. And I'll show you what principle that is when we deal with subjectivism as a philosophy. Subjectivism under the ontology, but it refers to different perspectives of citizens in this context of, in the context of GNU. If I were a researcher of GNU, including my own perspective, because lenses, or what they call school of thought, views, opinions, they have a place and a role in shaping how decisions are made. And that is an ontology. That's an ontology. That's a reality. That's a paradigm. So when you talk about a paradigm, what's your research paradigm? You are talking about ontology. What you are seeing right here on the screen, it's ontology. It's a paradigm. It's a school of thought, right? The second one, before I move on, the second one is epistemology. You can see under ontology there, you've got epistemology. Now, epistemology. So can you say epistemology where you are? Try. Epistemology. Like I'm saying, don't think of anything difficult. I'm not hearing you. It's fine because I'm on a broadcast place now. But you can say epistemology. Now I'm saying that because a lot of students are struggling with these words because these are not words that we are using every day. So remember, epi means on top. Epi means on top, right? So epistemology. So it is the science of knowledge. It answers a question. How do I know what I know when I claim to know it? So what am I claiming to know? I'm claiming to know the reality that I was talking about, a reality which is ontology. So I'm claiming to talk about either the objective reality or the subjective reality that I referred to before. So how do I know it? The ontology was answering the question of what. It was it needed it was a descriptive state where I was describing something, what it is. It was the government of national unity. So I was describing that. Now the next question is, how do I know that South Africa is now moving to a GNU, a government of national unity? How do I know? So now that's where now epistemology is extremely important. But as a scholar, I don't just say I know because X, Y, Z. I need to first explain what that is. And in my explanation of what GNU is, I still have to now have these verifiable sources. These verifiable sources are critical. They are not necessarily newspapers. They are not necessarily magazines. They are not necessarily cuttings from websites, but they are credible sources that are published either a conference proceedings or a peer-reviewed journal. Even to a certain extent, preprints add value because preprints have been seen and reviewed by editors, but the preprints are not peer-reviewed, but they are reviewed by editors, or they are moderated, that's the right word, they are moderated by the editors. So they give credible information there in your study when you explain, and that explanation falls under what we call epistemology, as you are seeing on the slide here. So that's epistemology. So without me, okay, let me just go back to the slide again. Without moving again, so I've got then axiology. Now, axiology, as you are seeing down there, it talks about values. Now, I will talk a lot about axiology as I take you on this journey when we talk further or deeper into your report. Just take a break. Right, let me continue. When I go into your report, so I will get into the axiology, but axiology is all about the value systems, the value of your study, but values not in terms of the importance, but values in terms of belief systems that shape your value system. So it's absolutely very important. That's why every paper you'll see that the researchers can explain as to whether this research has been funded by certain people, because funders need to be disclosed so that it helps the research to be credible and people can believe what is said, so that it was not driving a particular narrative, but it was authentic in its nature, particularly research in political science and research in social sciences, and to a certain extent, research that advocates for use of a particularly therapy. I'm thinking of COVID-19 right now, that a lot of papers that were published in terms of an intervention needed to be disclosed. The researchers needed to disclose who are their funders. If there's no disclosure, it remains questionable. And just recently, before we go to the break, recently we launched a study or a discussion at one of the top universities, University of Johannesburg. We had a roundtable about a study we conducted about the achievements of government. So the study is not complete, it's still going on. And one of the respondents asked if this study is funded by government, because it could have felt like we funded by government of Gauteng had we not disclosed that, because we were focusing on the achievements of government, what government has achieved thus far. And it was important that time, because we're going for elections, that decisions to be made must be made upon all information that is clear. So it was massively very, very important, but it's a study that is going on even now when we're talking about decisions of GNU in terms of citizens and how they view it. This is very, very important. These are absolutely very important because they are referring to how the citizens are impacted by achievements of government. So that study needed disclosure as to whether it is funded or not funded, or if it is funded, did government fund that? So that's the question I was asked. It has to do with issues of axiology. Now let's go to the issue of methodology. My goodness, this one is interesting. But let me tell you what, for you to understand methodology, it's absolutely very important that you stick to, sorry, my mouth, my lips are sticky, so you know very well, colleagues, that I always have dry mouth when I talk. So you get used to this little baby here. And I said to others, I'm a pastor, so you know pastors use this. So you on Facebook, don't be surprised if you know pastors. At least I'm still not wiping the whole face. I'm just wiping my mouth. Okay, that was a disclaimer there. But so when it comes to methodology, one important thing that I can give you advice upon, esteemed scholars, is that there are so many books. There is Kumar, there is Kumar, there is Kotari, there is Creswell, there is Saunders, there is Newman, there is quite a number of many scholars that have written about the full methodology itself. But the best of the best, as a research professor, I can tell you that it is the one by Saunders, because Saunders, of all the other scholars, they are able to provide a framework, which is a guide. So that framework, it gives you different steps, and I'll be teaching a lot about these different steps as I go on into the next part. Now, I want to talk about epistemology, and then I'll get back to methodology. So if you look at my slide here, there are 4 quadrants you are seeing on the slide. It's about epistemology, and after this session I'll then go to a little bit ad break, and then I'll come back, but let me continue with this part. So here I am talking about epistemology. Let me ask you a little. You can write there on Facebook chat, and write on Facebook again. I mean on Facebook and on Zoom chat, and even on YouTube. Can you write? Let me ask you, what did I say epistemology is all about? So give me the components of epistemology as I've given before, and now I'm giving you here the dimensions of epistemology. But what did I say epistemology is about in terms of the metaphysics of study? So there were 2 components of metaphysics. There was ontology and epistemology, and I explained what epistemology is about. So while you write the chart, and we'll check and review that chart, let me go on and talk about what is on the screen here. So empirical epistemology is critical, and I've talked about it in the previous. Think of a court case, think of a judge, and think of the witnesses coming in here to witness on what they have seen. Now please create that picture. So think it's a court situation. Here is a judge, and there is the accused, and there are witnesses. Now, for us to understand the accused, we want to first understand the witnesses. And these witnesses are asked questions by a prosecutor. And the prosecutor wants to first establish their credibility as witnesses. Are they credible enough to come and give testimony in this case? That is how we look at literature. That's how we look at empirical epistemology. We are looking first into the credibility of sources that are used to give us an empirical evidence. So if they are not credible, if the sources are not credible, that's why, colleagues, you'll remember, during COVID-19, I used to advise scholars that don't put anything in our group, in our scholar group, that has not got empirical evidence, because there was a lot of misinformation and disinformation right there. So we did not want that to be part of us as scholars and consume and debate on information that is either mis or disinformation. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to use credible information. So the sources need to go through critical review themselves. So you might have heard and you might have seen that here at the Global Center for Academic Research, we now encourage scholars not to write literature for the sake of literature. There are certain criteria that they've got to do this empirical epistemology, and that includes a rigorous process of selecting credible research or literature that has got answers, or evidence, because it becomes evidence-based research if there is evidence. But that evidence needs to be critically examined the same way your witnesses would be examined. So examination of your sources is important. So scholars, today the time has passed where I see a good paper and I look at it as a good paper because I believe it's a good paper. I need to answer a number of questions on that paper. There's, for instance, many critical tools that we use, including, for instance, CASP, which has got 10 questions, and then COLEC, which has got about 32 questions. Those are the most common ones, but there's a number of them. And you'll see when those that are registered on our portal, still for this study or research methodology, those that are registered on our VLE and our registered students, then you have seen that when you look at the tools, we've got a compendium of these tools that critically appraises to give empirical epistemology. So it's absolutely important that I wanted to address that, because every time you write, the issue of credibility is the issue. And on the issue of credibility, there are what we call current sources and old sources. And I encourage students to make sure that at least about 65% up to 70% of your writing should be made up of current sources, which means 5 years, others say 6 years for a thesis, and for a paper it takes up to 10 years back. And it's understandable so, because 5 years, you can think of a strategy. Strategy is looked at, or a policy is implemented within 5 years, and then it is now evidenced in terms of the next 5 years itself. So I think the papers do accept this issue of 10 years as for currency, but students who are at different universities are encouraged to look at 5 to 6 years as their year of currency in their writing. So then that shows that you are aware of the current empirical evidence, in terms of the intervention or in terms of the phenomenon of interest that you want to write about. So it's either an intervention you are propounding or a phenomenon of interest that you want to put up there. So those are absolutely very, very important, that you look and understand the importance of the currency. However, you've got the other 30% that I talked about, or 35% that I talked about. This is now theoretical evidence. When you use theoretical evidence, if you talk, for instance, I remember recently I was in a meeting of public administration, and public administration, the discipline, the academic discipline has been seen as being a baby, or the father of public administration being Woodrow Wilson, for instance. You remember President Woodrow Wilson. So if you look at that, you will find out that that theory, that's a theory, and that cannot change. He's still the founder. But you would then, as a scholar, have a responsibility to link that to current literature itself. Again, you can't just quote these and leave them there. Theories are old, most of them, because theories have to take some time to be known and to be trusted. Like theories of leadership, for instance, transformational theories, you know how long they've been there. So if you are using a theory of transformation as part of your evidence, so it's very, very important that you understand how it links to the current situation. And while we are there, still talking about empirical evidence, I think at this time I must go for a break, and I will see you the next time around, next break, just don't go around, stay put, and just wait for me. We'll talk about the other quadrants and the next stuff that we've got to talk about. See you then. Right. So I'm back now, and thank you so much for waiting for me. So I hope you are making any contributions. I'll be checking your contributions on Facebook just now or on Zoom as well. Even on YouTube, my team will be helping me just to see if there's any contribution or any other question that you asked. These things are extremely important, and you'll see a good thesis when you see these things in it. Right, so I discussed the empirical epistemology. So now I am getting to authoritative epistemology. So what is authoritative epistemology, and how does it differ from epistemology? So it this type of epistemology is good for literature review and for references. Let me give you an example, for instance. If you look at the legal research, or let me just say statutes or pieces of law, any other act number so and so, act number so and so, and all that, we're dealing with some companies, and we're dealing with repositioning. And when we deal with repositioning, we look at different acts. It could be Public Service Act, it could be Educational Act, it could be any type of act. So they give you an authoritative epistemology to be able to put through a sound argument, because you are able to say, according to section so and so of whatever, this can be done like this. Yes, literature says this and this, but in addition to what literature says, the act also says this, and we are bound by the act, because most acts are written that these acts are binding. So we are bound by the act, so we follow the act. We follow the Public Finance Management Act, we follow the Public Service Act, we follow the Constitution itself, which is an act, and the Supreme Act on its own. So we follow quite a number of acts, and they become an authoritative epistemology. But authoritative epistemology as well would be a paper that is your major reference or seminal work, what Professor Lebisi calls gurus. So these are seminal authors. So what they come up with is authoritative information on a particular issue. So that becomes also authoritative epistemology, and it's useful for your literature review because it gives good argument. Having read all other articles, now you've got these as well as your authoritative information that gives you a strong argument to how your literature or your arguments in literature have actually been shaped. And remember, the literature is going to help you to identify gaps, different gaps, but not only gaps, it's also going to give you evidence of what works and has been applied and how it has been applied. So that's the basics of authoritative epistemology in serious arguments in your research itself. And then you've got also what is called the other one is logical epistemology. Now, logical epistemology is interesting because it is useful for reasoning and for defense of logic. This is where now you are able to articulate what is also called theory of argumentation. So we need to know and make a difference as to whether our argument is it's hypothetical, deductive, or is it inductive, or is it abductive, or even reductive. So let me repeat again. It's deductive, it's inductive, it's abductive, or reductive. So these are the way that we argue. That's how we make logical arguments, or theory of argumentation is based on the logical epistemology. So, and then the other one is intuitive epistemology. Now this one is useful, as you can see there. It's helping for ideation, for generation of ideas. I was saying to the team earlier that I'd read that Steve Jobs would not employ you if you don't have ideas. They would employ you specifically for ideas. And good research is based on good ideas. So this is where ideation comes in, because you've seen something and you want to solve a problem, and you come up with ideas of how you can actually solve this problem. So this is intuitive. It's not just a hunch, it's deeper than just a hunch. And that is some type of epistemology. So now, what I'm going to be doing is I've got guests that will come in at the end of the session that are going to ask questions, and I'll go. But for now, I'm going to be dealing with the influence of ontology on research designs. So I'm going to, as you can see on my slide, I've got first the concept that is called a research paradigm, which is also a reality. But I've got also what is called research approach and research method. So this language I am using is language according to Saunders et al. And different years or different editions, but it's according to Saunders et al. Because someone else, an approach means something and a design means something. But in the context of what I'm talking about, a paradigm or a worldview or a school of thought all of them, they refer to what is called a reality, which is the ontological position of your study. So that's a paradigm, right? There are different types of these. These paradigms have got epistemologies. And for instance, an epistemology for an objective paradigm is positivism, but it's also a paradigm on its own. So positivism, then there is interpretivism, then also is pragmatism. But there's even many more that you'll get as we get into the other days and we deal with this, deal deeper with this. But the common known that are used in academic research are positivism, interpretivism, and pragmatism. And really, as you can see, positivism gives it gives a perspective or a view of a single and objective reality. An example, a human being, the anatomy of a human being is a reality, is a belief system, and that belief system is the same. That's why you can leave South Africa and go to the Philippines and still go to a medical doctor. They have studied the same thing. They will look at you and your problems are there. It's easy for them to diagnose you. They may even diagnose you not knowing the language because they are dealing with single objective reality. This is the reality of human anatomy, and they can deal with any part of your sickness and disease because they understand, they're talking one thing, one language. That's why you may also be referred to a doctor in a country that doesn't even speak English, but they will be able, with the help of an interpreter, hopefully, they will be able to understand upon examining you because they are dealing with the same reality. Just like if you deal with a stone, the composition of a stone is the same reality everywhere. I'm always amazed at how the world looks the same as I travel different countries, and I see that when you go to a particular country, you think you'll see a different thing. A river is still a river, and grass is still grass. It's the same ontology. The only thing that is a little bit different, colleagues, is the rain of the Philippines. I've not seen it raining with lightning the way it does. It just pours out, but it's still rain. So they call rain as well because it's rain. So I'm trying to say ontology deals with an objective reality that does not necessarily need the interaction of a human actor or social actor. Us, rain is rain without us. The only way we interact with this reality is where we come subjectively because we want to interpret it. That's how interpretivism comes in. As a matter of fact, that's how you'll see the need to go and move towards the right of my screen, because that's where you are seeing now pragmatic research, because pragmatic research becomes more practical and action orientated because it deals with the issues and what works. It looks at what works because it's more practical. So these are the influences on ontology, on research design. So you will see that now that we understand these different realities, their influence is that if a research follows a positivist or objective reality, then it uses a deductive method of reasoning, which is called a top-down approach. It's a reasoning approach that uses what has already been written there. I made an example with law, for instance. So when you say according to section so and so, you are already using something that is there, that has already been written. I love Jesus Christ when he says, "It is written." Jesus talks about that and he says, "It is written." When he's asked questions, he can answer on his own, or if he doesn't want to answer on his own, he will take you back to the scriptures. When he does that, he is now coming with a deductive reasoning approach because he is not using his own approach, but he's using what has already been there. Sometimes we call it an a priori. It is an a priori. That means, therefore, when we come to inductive, it is posteriori because it is an approach whereby we are observing things as they happen, and we are observing there are patterns that they form and what themes come up of that. So it's through observation and it becomes experiential, and it's not only experiential, it's also based on our own reality. That's why I talked about multiple perspectives, because it's about how I understand even myself as a researcher, how I understand this. So it's my own reality, and then that becomes now, it becomes the posteriori, or it becomes an observation that is very, very subjective. And then you got an abductive one, for instance. Now, if you look at the columns on the slide, you'll see that the columns are made to actually talk to each other, even in terms of colors. Now, when you look at abductive approach, and these approaches, according to Saunders, they are a reasoning approach. They are methods of arguing your story. And you can see abductive is a collection of both inductive and deductive and what works within that. And in the next lectures, where we teach about these specifically, then you learn to understand. But let's go to methods now. Methods, then you can see there, under the reasoning, in terms of the Saunders framework, then we get methods or research traditions, which would be quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. Now, colleagues, you can see how I get frustrated when a student writes something about research, and the method, when you go to their chapter 3, they'll say this study was a quantitative or quantitative research. That I expect to see it further down. I want you to start telling me about the philosophical underpinnings of your study, and those two rows on top, that is paradigm and reality. All those rows towards from the left to the right, they refer to your philosophical or metaphysical position of your study. They are metaphysics, they are intangible. So this is where you start, and then you come in even into the approach is still part of your metaphysics. Only when we come to procedures or traditions, we start there with quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. So your choice of study, if your choice was for a positivist paradigm, clearly it cannot then have a qualitative research tradition. It will always have a quantitative, it will be always deductive, and it's always a single objective reality. If it is positivist, if it is interpretivist, then it is always subjective, and it always accommodating multiple perspectives. Your perspective as a researcher, and the perspectives of all those that are your participants or your informants. So it includes them. There are multiple perspectives. It includes their perspective, and then and inductive as well, because you look at it. It's more bottom up. So you start with these observations and understanding what patterns they form before you make a conclusion. And it's always qualitative research and mixed methods. Now the next thing, colleagues, according to this method I am using, so the research design or the research strategy, we have not even come to it. We have not even started talking about it. So we're still talking about the methodology and showing different methods and how they influence, how the ontology influences different levels of your design. But we now come into a research design, which is sometimes called research strategy. And you can see your designs there. If it was a positivist, so you would have perhaps dealt with the design of a correlational research, or a survey, or experimental research. So that's what you would actually deal with. So if it is a survey, if it is a positivist philosophy or positivist paradigm or positivist school of thought or a positivist philosophical assumption, so that means your design is going to be a survey. Most what I see esteemed scholars in social sciences, students opt for a survey. They don't opt for experiments, because experiments have got a whole lot of requirements with regard to ethics. But I'm looking forward to still see someone who does experiments. I think experiments could be very, very fun, where you are literally checking the performance of students in a room that has got light light or a room that has got no light. I'm making an example with that. So those experiments are also very, very important, but I don't see quite a number of them in social sciences. And yeah, so it's something that can be looked at, but they do survey all the time. And when they do survey, most students, what's popular is the instrument they design upon Likert scales, and 5-point Likert scale or 3-point, but most commonly 5-point Likert scale. That's what they're looking at. So that would be there. But now with qualitative research, you can see I put multi-methods there. What do I mean? That's where now you can see I'm not saying mixed methods, I'm saying multi-methods. It's not necessarily mixed methods, but it's the number of methods that are methods for design in qualitative research. About 14 of them, but I'm going to mention 5, the key 5 ones that are mentioned by Creswell. And this is a case study, and then phenomenology, and then ethnography, and then narrative inquiry, and grounded theory. But now, colleagues, even though there are 5, there are more than 5. Because if you look at case study has got up to about 8 variations of case studies. It's got 3 variations of case study according to Stake, and then 3 variations according to Yin. I already have got 6. And then further 3 variations, and Miriam as well, and other known gurus in case study. So you've got about a number of, so you don't just say it's a case study, you must explain what type of a case study. If for instance you said this is a descriptive, explorative or explanative case study, I know already that you are using the frame of Robert Yin. If you mention that, I know when you say descriptive, you say explorative, or you start with explorative, descriptive, or explanative, then I know that you are using a framework by Robert Yin, who is a guru in case studies. But if you talked about, for instance, said it's instrumental, it's intrinsic as well, then I know you are using a variation of Robert Stake as well. So you understand, so when a scholar is using this, or if you are now using and mixing these and finding an approach where you can actually accommodate both Stake and Yin. So your case study has got variations. So you can see it's variation over variations, complexities of qualitative research. And then you've got phenomenology itself, and also phenomenology has got variations because it's got what we call hermeneutic phenomenology, it's got transcendental phenomenology. So you can see that there are 2 types of phenomenology. So you don't just say I use phenomenology. You must say I chose phenomenology for a reason X, Y, Z, and explain the variation that you are using so that we know that are you using Mustaka, for instance, or someone else. So we need to know who you are using. And then you've got ethnography. So, and then ethnography as well has got 2 variations. So you've got different variations. They talk about an ethic perspective or emic perspective. So both are referring to either an insider view or an outsider view. Those are approaches when you do ethnographic research. So it's very, very critical to know and understand. I did ethnography, but what was it? Was it an ethic type or was it an emic type of ethnography research? Then you've got narrative inquiries, which is purely made up of stories. But then you've got grounded theory as well. I love grounded theory because remember I said it's my birthday today? It was founded the year I was born, and I'm not telling you when I was born. But grounded theory was found by Glaser and Strauss in that year. And that year, what happened is that as years followed in 1985, so I'm not mentioning the year it was found, you must check as a scholar where it is, because you might just get into my date of birth, and I'm keeping that secret. So then 1985, then you've got other scholars that had started already with Glaser and Strauss, and then changing and having a little bit different variation. But in 2014, you've got Kathy Chamaz as well. Kathy Chamaz coming out with a constructivist view of grounded theory. So she comes with a constructivist view of grounded theory in 2014. So already I've given you 3 variations of grounded theory. So you don't just say grounded theory, but you must mention, is it grounded theory of Chamaz, or is it grounded theory of a different view from the original one, or is it the original one? So when you write your research, these are absolutely very important. And qualitative research is not only in these, but we'll continue to talk about it because we've got also other methods, particularly now after 2020, after the COVID-19. These methods that you are seeing, actually it's rudimentary on them, that the way of data collection has got an interface with participants. So it's face-to-face interviews. And COVID-19 had stopped that, but it did not stop the life of qualitative research methods. So scholars came up with new approaches like collecting method using Teams or using Zoom, which was very, very popular there, or other tools such as WebEx, for instance, or as GoTo. I don't see GoTo anymore now, and I don't see much about WebEx, but I've seen that television still uses WebEx. So they would use that to collect data. But then other methods that came in to make the 14 methods would be the netnography. Netnography, it deals with the information that is on the net, that is on the internet. So it's called netnography. And then that's written by Cosinets. So it's called netnography. But then you've got also autoethnography. You've got autoethnography. You've got ethnomethodology. You've got appreciative inquiry. You've got participatory action research. You've got systematic review, and systematic review as well, and I'll teach about it in other sections. It's got its own methods, about 14 types as well. So qualitative research has got a number of complexities. So, but these that you're seeing on the screen are the main traditional ones that have actually been propounded by scholars such as Creswell and many, many others as well. Now that you understand the positivist research design and the interpretivist research design I've just given now we go into the pragmatist research design, which is now the use of mixed methods. Now again here, mixed methods are not just mixed methods as they are, but it would be the use, the first variations would be the qual-quan. Now I'm giving you theoretical notation. Look at how I'm writing them. So the writing that you're seeing there is the notation. So if you used qual-quan that you seen, the one that you're seeing right now on the screen, that means it's an equal status or it's concurrent quantitative and qualitative research method. So it's equal status. So you could then have this one as quan-qual, still equal status. So you already have two that you are seeing. Then you've got another one, qual-quan, which is my orientation. My orientation is what you are seeing. And my orientation, ladies and gentlemen, that which you are seeing right there, the qual-quan. But now, when you're seeing the first qual-quan, big qual and small quan, it means that it is simultaneous design. So it is simultaneous design, but the core is qualitative research, and then the supplemental is quantitative research. We've just done that on the Gauteng achievements and research that we've just done now. So the core was through the interviews that we are doing to understand the level of communication the government does towards citizens with regard to its achievements. And then the quan would be now the survey that we collected data across all 5 regions of Gauteng. And then if it is sequential, it means you start with one, and then when you are done, you collect that data of quantitative research, you analyze it, and after analyzing it, you formulate questions for quantitative research. So your questions are not necessarily the same, and that is now your qual-quan, but sequential design. So what you are seeing already, you are seeing 4 variations of mixed methods, and I'm not done. So you've got the quan-qual, and then you've got the quan-qual, as you can see. So you can see right now you've got about 6 variations of mixed methods. And I hope this is not confusing you, but one of the speakers that is speaking at the conference that we're going to be having in September, Professor Tony Onebuzi, is actually one who wrote on these. He's written extensively on mixed method, and I would say don't miss out. So please start to submit your abstract right now and make sure that you interface directly with Professor Tony Onebuzi as well with regard to what you are seeing on the screen. So right there on top, I just have got the originators of these theories that or these three approaches that I'm actually showing with regard to how you can do your research and make choices. So, but remember again, your literature is going to be the one that directs you as to how you choose any method. Now, let me show you the approach. So, having done this, having written, as you can see, this is Saunders, Lewis, and Thornhill of 2019, including Creswell, including Lincoln, and including Creswell and Clark, Kothari 2004, Rostran and Rallis 2003, Payton 2002, and Lincoln as well, and in 1990. So you can see it's a collection of scholars, and these are gurus, are regarded as gurus in qualitative and quantitative research, that have put up their data that we used to prepare this module for you and for your consumption. I don't know if we've got any questions so far, but I now am going to finish this segment, and then the next segment we're going to have the conversations with some of the research enthusiasts in here that work with us, that are going to be asking some questions. Hopefully these questions will help you. But now look at this. So this is your research methods. These are your approaches to research methods. You can see this, and I think a lot of you have seen it. Dr. Benny, you know, when we wrote a paper during COVID-19, we used this approach, and it was really fun to actually use this approach of mixed methods. And mixed methods becomes absolutely nice if you can use any of these approaches. And it's dedicated to the work of Professor Tony Onebuzi, who is coming to South Africa in September on the 25th to 27th. He will be right here, and he's talking mainly on the 26th, but he'll be here. So please come and interface with him. Now, so now let's say you are starting to write your study. So you are starting to write your study. I already said the first thing that you think of is your research philosophy. That's what I was showing you that side. Now I'm actually giving you the research onion as it is, and I'm peeling it. So this is the first layer of the onion, is what? Your research philosophy. That's your first layer. And then your research philosophy can be either positivist, interpretivist, or even pragmatist. So that would be your research philosophy. That's your first step that we have. I just want to check with my team. Do we have any comments from Zoom right there? No comments right there. So let me just continue. All right. So I told you I'm not alone. I am working as a team. Okay, I'm not just doing things alone. I've got people who are helping me in here. So it's better to work as a team. These methods as well, you can see they are a team, because not one method works alone, but method becomes effective when it's grouped to others. So that's your first layer. So when you are thinking, think deep about the role of philosophy. So colleagues, you don't just write these philosophies for the sake of writing them. You write them, but then you demonstrate that you know them, and then you must give a justification for the one you've chosen. Here you are just defining what these are, but there should be a justification for the one that you are choosing. Having written your philosophy, then you go to what I mentioned as a research approach, and this is what you are seeing now. And you can see the order in this onion. So those that are towards the positivist, they are grouped on that side. So deductive indeed is a positivist reasoning approach. It's a reasoning approach that is within the philosophy of positivism, whereas abductive reasoning is a philosophy of it's a reasoning approach within the philosophy of pragmatism. And then inductive, as you can see at the bottom there, it is within the philosophy of interpretivism. So you can see the relationship. That's how I expect to see your research as you work. And you'll be surprised in the future days. We'll be showing you how this approach also influences your literature review. And literally your study is done. You can finish it. Once you've done a lot of activities like data collection and all that, you can finish writing very, very, very quickly once you understand this. And that's what most of you want. Now the step 3 is what I mentioned as method. So refrain from starting on quantitative or qualitative research or mixed method. Yes. A lot of students do like that. When they start chapter 3, they'll say this study is qualitative. It's not. It's predicated on the first part of your philosophy. And also, scholar, please do mention which frame you are using for your chapter 3. It's very important for your research methodology. So here we are using the frame of Saunders. Perhaps if you've got any other frame, it might not necessarily be like this, but it will be anything close to this. But this is what has been seen as the best way of writing, because it makes sense, it demonstrates you know what you are doing, and it puts a logical flow of each step to the other, showing connectivity and connectedness of these concepts that you're talking about. So this has been seen as the best that you can actually use. Right. Then thereafter, the research design. So research design is sometimes called research strategy, and you've seen a case study or an experiment in quant, but then below here in qual, you've got case study, grounded theory, phenomenology, grounded theory. Well, I've got grounded theory there. And what do I have here? A case study, GT, phenomenology. And then you also have narrative inquiry, ethnography. You got ethnomethodology, autoethnography, participative action research. You've got action research sometimes. You got that on its own. You've got systematic reviews. You've got, my goodness, you've got so much, about 14 types of qualitative research designs that you can choose from. But you don't simply just choose. These are informed by the type of question you have and the nature of the study and the problem you want to solve. You don't simply just go and choose it because of the problem you want to solve. That's what informs what you must know. So it's incumbent upon you as a scholar to understand these methods, because when you understand them, then it's easier to know which is the appropriate research design that can answer your problem that you want to solve. This is exciting, isn't it? Right. So having done that, having chosen the methods and then collected data both from the qualitative research and quantitative view, and qualitative using semi-structured, but for grounded theory, you'd use unstructured. Semi-structured or semi-structured means that there's a particular structure that helps you to ask questions according to objectives. But when it is grounded theory, it is open. Remember, structure guides. But if it is quant, it is fully structured. So they say that the questionnaire is structured, and it is really doesn't have any human element, because there's no face-to-face in quant. But you send out a survey, and today we're using online such as SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, for instance, and then you just send it out there, and the people complete, and they send, and then you analyze that, which is very, very good, but it gives a generalized view. But when it comes to qual, it is interviews. So what's important is for you to understand the use of Cactus. Yes, I said Cactus. So which is the software that is used, or computer-assisted qualitative data analysis software, Cactus. So different software. And here at the Global Center for Academic Research, we are glad to say we have actually developed over many years, since 2019, we've developed a technique that was followed by a software that is cloud-based now. That is cloud-based and allowing a whole lot of things that you could do to analyze your data. But that's not all. Once you've analyzed your data, then we go to what is called quality criteria for rigor itself. And on the quantitative side, that's when you start talking about validity and reliability. We don't necessarily use validity and reliability in qual, but in qual, if you look at the bottom there, we use what is called credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. However, scholars do like to say that I've applied principle of credibility. My question then becomes how? The process that you used to apply credibility or transferability or they're absolutely important. And in the next sessions we'll be talking about how do you establish that using concepts such as the what you call ICR, intercoder reliability, Cohen-Skapar stuff. How do you triangulate? How do you establish negative case analysis, for instance? And then how do you deal with respondent validation and a number of things. These are the things that you do, but you do these down there in interpretivism. So they are an interpretivist approach. They are called, all of them, when they are for trustworthiness. So that then on top there you've got validity and reliability. These are concepts that are used in quantitative research. So quantitative research, validity, and then there's what we call internal validity, external validity, concurrent validity, and then we've got reliability, objectivity as well. Those are concepts within quantitative paradigm or positivist philosophy. And within interpretivist, only four. These four collectively are called trustworthiness. Because it's qualitative research, we've got to trust you because you were as well a tool, you were an instrument as a data collector. So we have to trust you as well. So that is where we've got trustworthiness. And when we mention trustworthiness, we start thinking of Lincoln and Guba 1985, and we think of credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. And then we know that your study is legit. So I've already talked today, this week, I'm addressing this issue. It's okay for you to continue to send your questions on Facebook and even after the session, if you've got them, because this week throughout we'll be running this issue of what I've been teaching about, methods and concepts, and then research methodology. So you can then make your comments later on as you look at the video on YouTube and on Facebook as well. Obviously on Zoom, we'll be out of Zoom, but we are in Zoom now, so you can comment there just as I'm going to a break. But if you can't now and you're going to be thinking, we're going to run this course throughout until the next Wednesday. So we'll be there to answer every question that you have over and above the questions that my esteemed scholars will come in and ask me. Now, these are some of the scholars that are working in the office with me all the time, but they are researchers. They are learning. They are called assistant researchers. So assistant researchers are learning all the time. They are here to learn. Once they are done, then they go elsewhere. So this place is a place of learning. You learn, and you learn by practice. And once you've learned, then you go and practice elsewhere where you are. So this is a learning place, it's a learning organization. So they're going to be here as well to ask some questions about these things that I've talked about. But it doesn't end there. So you are welcome to ask questions even later on. You can actually continue to ask questions on Facebook and on YouTube as well. So for now, I'm bowing out, but before I bow out, let me check if you've got any questions that I can answer now on Facebook or on YouTube or on Zoom while I drink water. Indeed, I don't have those, but my team is checking. So when I come back, if I've got them, I'll start with those, but I'll be with more guests in here when I come in that are going to be asking different questions, and we're going to have a dialogue based on what I was talking about. See you just now. Thank you so much. Right. Thank you so much for staying the course. And we would like to get also ideas. If you've got any ideas of whatever we can improve, you can let us know. Dr. Johanna, I also hear that you are struggling with the slides. They're not in slide mode. I'm sorry about that, but I'm on a slide show this side, so I'm not sure what is happening there. And then um, Medri, I don't know how you are seeing where you are, Doctor to be Medri, in Zimbabwe. You are joining us right from Harare, and then we've got Dr. Chris as well, and Dr. Motlalipule here. Dr. Chris and Motlalipule are also helping me to manage these sessions. We've got a Dr. Joyce Sibanda as well in here. I welcome everybody else again once more, and I'm asking you, colleagues, to actually let us know if there's anything. As a matter of fact, just before I start, I've got some of our research assistants that I work with. They were interested as I was preparing the slide and said they would like to ask some questions, but I would like you as well to start with you and say if there's any other question in there. Maybe my team can make them audible. If you can raise a hand, and then my team will make you audible. Let's start to take the questions there as well. Just before I start with the questions, here I've got Nolo and I've got George in here. They're going to engage me. But before I start, let me start there if there's any other question in Zoom particularly. If there's any other question in Zoom. Okay, that's fine. There is no question so far. I'm not seeing, my team says there's no question. You keep observing the hands that are raised, and then you take the person that is raised. Without waste of time, colleagues, let's talk about, or let me hear any questions. I talked to you, I've got Nolo and I've got Tadi here, and other team members are not in here. And Ntatisi is not here, and you know, most of you know Ntatisi. She worked a lot with you on your documents. So this team as well work on these documents. And I talked these things. If you look at the screen, you are seeing this myriad of these pictures that you're seeing about research methods. And you might be having questions. I'll start with you, Nolo. What questions do you have based on the training that I had?
Okay. Greetings, viewers at home. Thank you so much, Prof, for inviting me in the broadcast today. I've got 5 questions for you here that I've jotted down when you're busy.
Okay, you start with the first one.
Yes, I'm just going to start
Thank
with
you.
the first
Thank
one.
you so much.
The
Thank you
first
so
one
much.
that I have for you, it goes as, could you explain how the choice of ontology influenced the formulation of research questions in a study?
Okay. Colleagues, if there's anyone else who wants to add in there, you are welcome to add. So can you ask that question again?
Okay. Could you explain how the choice of ontology influenced the formulation of research questions in a study?
Oh yes, it's absolutely very important because ontology is embedded with the question what. So and what reality really, not just what, but what reality, what is happening. I made an example with the government of national unity, for instance.
Yes.
And for you to describe the type of government South Africa is getting in, you are already answering the what. But your research question is not complete without explaining or seeking how is that known. How do you know what you know? You want to, so research question must have those elements, but not all the time. Sometimes a question can literally be an ontological question only, if it seeks to only understand the what without really trying to understand the how as well, because how it's processed, it could be how do I know what I know. So the what, for instance, Nolo, it could deal with the I'm trying to think. Case studies, Dr. Mtalipule, a case study, for instance. A case study can have the what, depending on how the question is framed. It can have a what and a how. Obviously, those will be dealing with the ontology. But it can also have how do I know what I know that I've explained what it is. So it does, ontology influence the research question in that perspective because it prepares you, and when the question is asked, it also helps to know, is this question, this question required to be answered by mixed methods or by positivist or by, for instance, if it's a question that already has numbers in it, for instance, how many parties or how many individuals voted for MK, or how many, or what was the voting scales. If it's a question that has got to deal with that, you already know that it is for it being numbers, it being numerical, and it will be primarily be based on numericals and defining or explaining those. It could, and not all the time, it could be, for me, it would be a mixed methods question because I would need to interpret, but it could also be only a quant. And remember, colleagues, just before we went into elections, I was on quite a number of media houses and papers where I was dealing with the role of qualitative research in shaping decisions. Because if you depended only on quantitatives alone, the problem is that you might get surprises, and we got lots of surprises as a result because we depended only on quants alone, and quant gave us things we did not expect. But had we gone to use deeper insights of qualitative research, perhaps we would have understood as well what are the constituencies, what are their opinions, not opinionating them on quant alone, but opinionating them also on interpretivism itself, on qual, so that we get there deeper, because through qualitative we are able to share exactly what they feel. We would have interviewed, for instance, there's this belief that a lot of people that are in MK are people that come from ANC. So had we done these kind of interviews, we would have actually picked up immediately that, hey, there is a problem there, because qualitative research looks at deeper issues. Quantitative research just gives us numbers. Dr. Johanna and Dr. Mtalipule, and even you, Dr. Chris, you will have agreed with me that you've seen it during HIV/AIDS, when quantitative research was trusted a lot because it was giving us what is called prevalence, and it also gave us, it would give us the prevalence, so we knew exactly what was the prevalence rate. So we knew that, including the incidence rate, so we knew how many people were infected in every year. So we had that data, and that data was not helping us because we needed to understand why. And so that is why ontology helps, because we would have gathered the reality of the members of ANC, their ontological perspective about current issues. And if we had understood ontology, we would have asked questions that would have helped us get deeper. But qualitative research is always overlooked in key things that affect societies, such as elections and other things. And so I hope I've answered your question.
Definitely.
Okay.
You've said it most.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much. My second question is based on epistemology. I want to know, how does epistemology guide the selection of research methods in the research onion model?
In the research onion model, yes. So, the epistemology, it deals with, I'll make an easy thing. And your epistemology in this would deal with whether the reality is objective or the reality is subjective. All right. And if the reality is objective, then we know very well that we are going to use a quantitative study. If the reality is subjective, then we know we are going to use a myriad and complex approaches within qualitative. It could be case study, and if it is case study, as I mentioned, what type of case study? Is it a yin type of a case study? Is it, and if it is a yin, which one? Is it explorative? Is it descriptive? Is it explanative? If it is a stake, which type of stake case study? Is it a single case study? Sorry, is it an instrumental case study, for instance? Or Merriam? Or is it a phenomenology and all that? So the epistemology helps us to understand. For instance, if I want to understand the lived experiences over the outcome of the elections, What are the lived experiences? Dr. Chris, I'm going to be asking you that question of lived experiences of election outcomes. So, of many people, lived experiences. How did they experience the outcome of the election? That question could be answered by a design which is phenomenology, because I'll be looking at the research design. So the epistemology helps me. So the way it is asked, the way a question is asked, can help me to understand what design. That is why, colleagues, when student comes in and say, I want to do a case study and I've got a topic, I always sit them down and say, please, let's talk. Let's have a discussion. Let's get back to the concepts. Let's talk first. And by the time we finish the talk, the students' decisions are different, because they would have understood different things.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's come to the layers of this research onion that you're talking about.
Okay.
I just want to know how do the layers of research philosophy and research strategies interact and influence each other?
All right. So if you can put this, colleagues, on the screen, I can put my current slide on the screen, and then I'll come back again. So these are the layers that we're talking about.
Yes.
Now, the layers, they are key important layers. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You see those layers? You can see even the size. They show you the external things, the outside, the periphery, and they take you from the periphery to the core. And you can see how important, if you look at the slide, you can see that the first layer deals with philosophy. And then it tells you that you've got positivist, pragmativist, and interpretivist. So when you write, each philosophy or each layer, literally what we call a golden thread. So you've got to make sure that you don't explain this for the sake of explaining them, because that becomes some form of sophisticated plagiarism. So sophisticated plagiarism means that you're just writing about what people are saying. But you need to write synthetically. You need to write synthesizing. And because synthesis is very important, that it's a product of critical analysis. So when you synthesize, you're showing us that what you are talking about, why you are talking about that. So positivism, explaining what it is, even if you're not writing about it, and explaining interpretivism, even if it's not informing your study, but your study is pragmatism, and then explaining the pragmatism, and then coming to showing why you chose pragmatism. It gives justification, and that thereafter you start introducing the next section and say the next section will be dealing with the approach. And in the approach there are concepts of deduction, abduction, and induction. So the reader, as they read, they know what they're going to read in the next. So when they get in there, they don't find something for the first time, but it's already been discussed before you left the first part. And then when you can, even paragraphs, even when you write paragraphs, colleagues, it frustrates every reader to read one paragraph as if you are hearing a different story, and another paragraph is like you are no longer reading or talking about what you are talking about. So it's always very important that when you write, each paragraph follows each paragraph. So there is a logic, there's a logical flow. So this is why then these layers must talk to each other. If they don't talk to each other, your study becomes a sophisticated, plagiarized approach. You've just simply written about these things for the sake of writing about them without showing coherence and how is it intersected with your study. So it's important that logic is there. It's like when we converse, we don't just talk about that and that. Okay, right now, because you're asking me different questions, I'm talking about that and that and that. But when we talk and you tell a story, there should be a story that I was here and then I went there, but also how I went there, and then what happened when I got there, and then where else did I go, instead of just telling about when I'm here and then when I'm there and when I'm there, and somebody doesn't even know how did I get there. All right.
Okay. No, I understand. Thank you so much, Prof. My last but not least question, I want you to explain for me the application or the practical application of what you just spoke about. Can you give an example of a study where the choice of epistemology significantly impact the research outcomes?
Oh yes, that everywhere. If the choice of the epistemology was not made properly, it's going to impact. And that question you're asking, ask it again. I'll tell you some words there that I
Okay.
got.
Can you give an example of a study where the choice of epistemology significantly impacted the
Yes,
research
I
outcomes?
wanted that. Significant impact. So epistemology, the significant or the significant impact on epistemology on the outcomes.
Yeah.
If you did not understand the relationship between your ontology and your epistemology, in other words, if for instance you are using positivism when you should be using post-positivism, or you are using positivism when you should be using critical realism or realism. I make an example. So definitely, the outcome of your study is going to be very, very impacted based on that. So it's very, very important to understand your. Let's start first. If your epistemological foundations themselves, let's say you got it right, you got your epistemologies right, but your epistemological foundations are not properly or have not properly followed a rigorous approach. And I mentioned the rigorous approach when I was explaining epistemology. Remember, as esteemed scholars, those 4 quadrants that I was talking about? So when I was explaining that, and I was talking about empirical philosophy, empirical epistemology. So I talked about the importance of verification of your sources themselves. So there's a whole lot of things. So epistemology could be how it is used, the choice of epistemology, like I made a critical realism or post-positivism and all that, that proper choice and even proper alignment. First of all, you can't use positivism and then use inductive. I make an example. So already when you read a paper, and I've read, George, I've read papers whereby somebody says, my philosophy is positivism and my approach is inductive. Then I even ask myself, how did it go through the journals themselves? So that is why then it's very important that you need to be vigilant. Not all published papers are how to say, they can earn a right to be in your paper. So not all published papers. That is why papers have to be critically analyzed, because analyzing those papers that you are using as sources for your study, you are looking at the legitimacy of including that as your epistemology. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof.
All right.
My last question.
Oh, there was a last question again. Oh, okay.
My last question is on consistency. I just want to know, how important is it to maintain philosophical consistency throughout the layers of the research onion? And what are the risks of not doing so?
So the risks of not doing so is to deviate. I'll start with the last part of the question. So the risks of not being consistent, if you know that you are, because if you are doing a positivist, or let me say you are doing an interpretivist or a constructivist study, so you need to know that your thinking all the time should be informed by that philosophy. When you are collecting data, your thinking should be informed by that philosophy. When you are analyzing data, your thinking should be informed by that philosophy. When you are interpreting and then you are also presenting a data or compiling your report, your thinking should be informed by that. Example, if you look at the study that you conducted, it was, if you saw what I presented here, let me just go back a little, back a little. Can you put on the slide? Let me just go back a little. Right. Oh, I'm so far back. So let me see. Just hold on. Put that slide. So if you look at, for instance, I'm going to mixed methods here. If you look at these, just look down there in the variations of mixed methods. So if, for instance, I am using qual, you can see qual is the core. I'm using the first one. If you look at the first one, qual is the core. So, and qual is the supplemental. If I am using that as an approach, which is a philosophical underpinning, so that means it is pragmatism, but a different type of pragmatism. It's a pragmatism that is sort of slanted this way. So qual is big, qual is small. I've got to be thinking of that in everything that I do. Should I not do that, it makes my study to be flawed. Right.
Okay, no. Thank you so much. My questions are finished, bro. Thank you so much.
I don't know, Mazwi, you can check for me as well if there are any other questions on Zoom or, Lazi, you can check if there are questions on Zoom based on what we discussed, or if there are questions on Facebook. In the meantime, I'm going to be welcoming also one of our research assistants as well, who is just been blessed with a new addition in his family, a father of a boy, George. So we're going to be looking at some of the questions that you might have as well. Right. So welcome, Daddy. You can ask us the questions that you have.
Good
Yeah.
evening, scholars. My name is Gladi George Mushresh.
Sure.
I've got very few questions to ask for scholars here.
Okay.
The first question is on understanding the methodology.
Yeah.
It says how does the research onion model facilitate
Sure.
the structured approach to deciding on a research methodology?
Yeah. So, and thank you for that question. I think it also came out here. I always encourage all scholars, first of all, to do research, to study the research onion. I wish I had it here. I would also just reflect that. But if you see, you can get me, you can put me on the screen. I put my slide on the screen again. If you see this, George, if you look at this, and you look at this flow, if you look at this and you look at this flow of the research methodology itself, of the onion,
Yes.
the layer, when you are writing already, it's a guide. Once you can do it properly, if you can get it properly, and if you are doing a master's degree or an honors degree, you can literally just talk about your philosophy and then get to the approach and get to the tradition and get to the same. But if you are doing a doctoral study itself, or what I call a business study, like we're involved in business studies or commissioned research, so it's very, very important that you use this as your guide, because it's a framework. It gives you a step by step. You've got a step that you follow and another step that you follow and another step. So I find it very, very important, right from conceptualizing or putting your concepts in place up to the time where you analyze your data. Right.
Thank you very much.
Yes. I'm actually tired of answering questions, but I hope you've got one or two questions anymore. I took many questions aside and I've been talking. Yeah.
My last question is, Prof.
Yeah.
What are the challenges of aligning philosophical assumptions with the research methods, complex studies?
Yeah. So the challenges, first of all, there are no challenges. There should not be challenges. As a student that is well taught, and I encourage students to either come to our research session because we're teaching this, or observe in your school, in your university, they always give about 2 weeks of learning, whereby they are going to teach you about this, because research philosophy is so important. It is like the foundation of your study. How can a house be built without foundation? So the challenge is to actually build that house without a foundation. That's where the challenge is. Or quick fixes are challenges. People like us who are supervisors, and Dr. Chris were supervising staff with him there as well, and other doctors who are supervisors here. We look at those things and we send it back, because it must go back. We need to see that these are dealt with. So it can't be a challenge. It is not a challenge. And I want to encourage you, scholars, none of anything here should be looked at as a challenge. Thank you so much, George, for that question. And as we're about to bow out and to go out, now it's going for 8 o'clock already. So as we're about to go out, I want to encourage you where you are. None of the research methods are difficult. It's all in your mind. And if you were, for instance, belonging to the philosophical approach where we come from, philosophical system where we come from, our philosophical system is based on Christ Jesus. And we know that we can tap into the mind of Christ. And the mind of Christ philosophically is a mind of wisdom that deals with these philosophical issues. So I don't know where you are as scholars. You might be having different philosophies. You might not have Christ as your philosopher. You might have someone else. But I do believe that All philosophers are great. I don't know them. I expect them to be great. My philosopher, the master of my life and the master of the life at GCAR is Jesus Christ the King. And when we follow these principles, his principles of courage, his principles of seeking knowledge, his principles of knowing that I like Paul talks about things like I can be hard pressed, but I'm not crushed. So there should not be any view of any other method that should be looked at as a challenge. So I want to encourage you scholars, the enemy, and I'm talking from my philosophy, which is Christianity, the enemy out there wants to take out the gift of knowledge that God gave and planted in you. And he puts on the fear that research is difficult. But I want to tell you today, I don't find it difficult, but at first it was scary. Do not be scared to learn, and do not be scared to falter. If you come to setups like this, you can falter very well. That is why today I even invited our research assistants, because everybody else, there is no, including myself, there are certain things I don't know. And when you are scrutinized in this environment, you are built. Nobody has got an intention to defame you or to humiliate you. This is not a space of humiliation. This is a space of learning. You can't learn. And the courage I had was to apply the mind of Christ. But the mind of Christ does not say sit there and just pray. It says sit there and do something. So you sit, you take your laptop, you research, read a lot of these in YouTube, read a lot of scholarly materials. It's there, it's available. And when you do that study, you won't find any challenges of aligning research philosophies with any components of these layers, because research philosophies are your foundation. But what is your foundation? Mine is Christ. What are you founded on? So tap onto that, because if you don't have a strong foundation, you will surely struggle. My foundation says, fear not, but be courageous. And I want to tell you, if you are writing your master's and your doctoral degree, fear not and be courageous. I am going to end here, but let me see if I can ask Dr. Mtalepule to close for us in prayer. We didn't even have that time to open in prayer. I apologize, but maybe Dr. Mtalepule can close, can give closing remarks, can give parting shots, and then also close for us in prayer after your parting shots. Dr. Mtalepule, over to you. Dr. Johanna, maybe we can ask you to close for us in prayer, Dr. Johanna. She's muted. Okay, right, that's fine. Let me save time. Let me close for everybody then. All right, you can mute them then. That's fine. Let me close for us in prayer. Father, we thank you, Lord God, for this session. You have called us, my God, even to times of today, the times where we sit in, Lord God, and we make research to be practical and impact on societies. We talk and make references, Father, my God, even to our government, but to other things, Lord Jesus Christ. And we believe that all scholars who are watching this, their research will also be practical and to be made to solve practical and existing problems, Father, my God. Give them courage, Lord Jesus. Give them courage, Father, my God, to know that no weapon formed against them shall prosper. And if you had made them and given them, Lord God, as part of their plan in life to be masters and to be doctors, Lord God, nothing can stand away from them, Lord Jesus Christ. Let them be courageous and do their studies. And all this I say in the mighty name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.